Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm here to share the speaker portion of our Connections After Hours gathering of the On Purpose Woman Global Community. Beth Shekinah Terrence speaks on compassion practices, building a foundation for self-care and resilience. Beth is a shaman and transformational facilitator. Her sole work is to help individuals, communities, and organizations deepen connection, cultivate compassion, and experience awakening. She works collaboratively with her clients to guide them through a unique process of transformation, healing, and integration that opens a gateway for their inner wisdom to become an embodied force in their lives, relationships, and businesses. And you can learn more about Beth at bethterrence.com, and that link is in the text of this video. Welcome, Beth. Thank you for being here. You're on.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share on one of my favorite topics. So I'm going to pull some slides up. Do I have that power, Jenny, I guess? Yes, I think so. Can everybody see that? 3 parts? Yes. Okay, great. So our topic tonight is compassion practices, building a foundation for self-care and resilience. And thanks for that wonderful introduction, Jenny. I don't really need to say that much more about me other than I have a few hats, and I think just in my journey as a human being and as a holistic practitioner for 27 years, and through all the aspects of my work, compassion has been really at the heart of my personal journey of transformation and healing, and what I love to support and share in others, individuals, communities, and organizations. And I think everybody here I have met recently or today, so but I do have a program every May called May is for Meta, 31 Days of Loving Kindness, which will be coming up soon. And I'll share a little more about loving kindness as we go on. So for today, our topic, we'll just take a look at defining self-care and resilience, exploring self-compassion, which is at the foundation of compassion. Want to look at some of the benefits of compassion and compassion practices and ways to really cultivate that in our lives, our relationships, and even we'll touch on our businesses. And as we do that, we'll take a look at 3 compassion practices: loving kindness, gratitude practice, and cultivating connection. And so I just wanted to take a moment and touch on what self-care is. I know we all have our self-care practices and how we view it, but just kind of have a foundation. And also, I've given this talk a lot to different groups, and particularly I do a lot of work with behavioral health professionals and even healthcare professionals. And I find sometimes they say, and I mean, I think I can say this myself, I know what self-care is, and yet how do I practice it? And how do I keep it as a kind of living force in my life? So, so just to think about the activities and practices that we do on a regular basis that help reduce stress and maintain both our long and short-term health goals. And I like to, and I'll touch on this a little bit more in a minute, but really look at the whole person: physical, mental, emotional health, even spiritual health, and that it's proactive and responsive. So we need to build a foundation in self-care so that when things happen in our lives, we can respond. And we'll, as we move through, see how compassion can really support that. So really anything we do to manage and reduce stress and compassion, fatigue, and burnout is part of self-care. And that's a big thing these days. I know some of us are in more maybe helping professions, or we're maybe a life coach or a holistic practitioner, but in anything we do, we're supporters of other people. And so that, that can be, there's joy and there's, I guess, fullness that comes from that. And it can be draining at times, and particularly living in our modern chaotic world. it's easy, especially in the last few years with the pandemic, to really come into a place of compassion fatigue or burnout. And so lastly, thinking about empowering ourselves to create that balance and equilibrium, not just in our personal life, but in our social lives, our relationships and interactions, and our work lives too. And I love this saying. It comes from Rumer Godden, and this image comes from notsalmon.com. Some of you probably follow Karen Samuelson. She's wonderful. But she created this image, and it says, there's an Indian belief that everyone is a house of 4 rooms, a physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional room. And most of us tend to live in one room most of the time, but unless we go into every room every day, even if only to keep it aired out, we aren't complete. So I think that really speaks to that idea of, embracing a holistic approach to life and self-care in terms of body, mind, emotion, spirit. And there certainly will be times when we need to attend to maybe our body more. Maybe we have a physical illness or challenge, or we've had a loss and a grief, and we have to tend to stuff more emotionally. But just to really think about touching on those different aspects or checking in some way. And then the integration of all those parts is another aspect of it. Went forward, good. And I did want to just define resilience, since that was part of our topic in terms of compassion practices as a support for building a foundation. So resilience is really our ability to recover when things happen in our lives, when we've had crisis or challenge. We all have different experiences and we face adversity in different ways. So it's really being able to come back to our center, to our place of wellness and balance, and the capacity to recover, which is again going to vary based on our personal life experiences currently and in the past, and then again with what we're experiencing, what kinds of experiences. But just to be thinking about, creating that foundation for yourself. I put that word in there intentionally in this title and description. And in a lot of, spiritual traditions and healing traditions, we talk about needing to return to the well when we've, been depleted, when we go off track or had a challenge and we lose our way for whatever reason. And so just to think about like that foundation being that well and replenishing that well. And what I found in my journey is that compassion practices are really a way to fill that well. Sometimes self-care again can seem like I know what to do, I know how to practice it. I even have maybe a self-care list or a plan, and yet things happen, or I decide I'm going to do this every day this week and I don't. So does anybody experience that? Yeah. Okay. So, and we're all really smart people, I think we know, what's going on, and we probably know ourselves to some degree, but it's still really hard. And there can be, obstacles. And so beginning to cultivate compassion and self-compassion is a way that we can maybe remove some of those obstacles. So I just can't give any presentation that talks about self-care without, I think, probably my favorite self-care quote. It comes from Parker Palmer, and he says, "Self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer to others." And just take that in for a minute. I think that pretty much says everything about self-care. And, I guess stewardship, to really think of self-care as stewardship, because we live in a culture, especially in the Western world, in the modern world, we may have been taught from our background that self-care is selfish. Anybody have that experience? Or we need to give to everybody else before we give to ourselves. So I know that I kind of learned that and embraced that unconsciously, but so it's been an unraveling to choose to care for myself first. So, and I imagine I'm not alone in that. So let's move on to talking about compassion and how that can support us in that foundation of self-care and resilience. I want to say just a couple things as we're beginning to delve in. One is that compassion, we can view it as like a feeling or an emotion, a quality, and we can view it as a practice, as an action. And so I really want to, think about that. And as I'm going through some of the material, I did title it Compassion Practices because it is something that we need to do in an active and engaged way so that we can have the experience of the feeling and the quality of it, both for ourselves and in our relationships and our work. So the foundation of compassion is self-compassion. And if we look at different spiritual traditions from around the world and different cultures, actually, Angeles Arian, I don't know if folks are familiar with her, she was an anthropologist and I would say spiritual teacher, studied cultures all around the world. And she found that compassion and one particular one we're going to look at is like the most universal practices. So this isn't something that's new. But today, science meets spirituality, and I'm really like kind of a geek for that. If you know me, I have this strong spiritual path I've been on my whole life. And yet now that there's research and science on different practices that have been around for millennia, it's just very exciting and it makes it accessible to more people. And it helps us to understand how it can support us. And in that can sometimes guide us a little more in how we practice. So I wanted to read this quote about self-compassion. It comes from Whitlock, who is a researcher on compassion. Said, self-compassion is the ongoing practice of relating to yourself kindly and fairly. It is especially helpful during times of stress and suffering. Self-compassion is not kicking yourself when you're down, which prolongs our stress reactions, creates more suffering, and delays your ability to get back up. Instead, self-compassion is about treating yourself as you would treat a good friend in distress. It's about responding with caring support. So I hope, my questions in the breakout was sort of kind of guide us to that idea of treating ourselves as we would a good friend in distress. And I know I always say, teach what you need to learn, and working with that inner critic and changing that is something that I'm always working on. In fact, I was reflecting back, and I actually one of Ginny's On Purpose Women conferences, I think it was 10 years ago, in Columbia, Maryland, I spoke on transforming your inner critic into your inner cheerleader was the topic. So here we are today. It's an ongoing journey. So I really just want to stress that idea of really, I know we all support people in a variety of ways, whether it's personally or professionally, but cultivating that foundation of self-compassion is really at the heart of any compassion practice. And there's, I'm going to touch on some other research as I go through some practices, but I thought these 4 points here are just very good essentials to some of the benefits of self-compassion itself. So looking at increasing our well-being and resilience to stress and trauma, supporting healthy behaviors and minimizing unhealthy behaviors. So they found that when people practice self-compassion, they might exercise more or do journaling versus maybe emotional eating or overworking. So it really can shift our patterns and behaviors. Just increasing positivity in terms of motivation, confidence, and our sense of personal responsibility. And then there's a lot about relationships and how we relate with others and both caring for others and ourselves. Those are just some essentials of how self-compassion can support us according to research. There's 3 elements of self-compassion that have been identified by Dr. Kristen Neff. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. She's a researcher and author of quite a few books on self-compassion. And in the studies, they identified these 3 elements: mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity. And so these are things we are aware of in other ways, but they brought them together here as a foundation of the elements of self-compassion, and they can help, again, guide us in our practices and our awareness about self-compassion. So the first is mindfulness, which is my favorite description of mindfulness is by John Kabat-Zinn, who says that mindfulness is being in the present moment non-judgmentally. So really just tending to ourselves, being aware, perhaps sensing what we're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally. And certainly there's many different kinds of mindfulness meditation and practices we can do. So it's attending to ourselves in that mindful way. And then self-kindness, treating ourselves as that best friend, as someone who is our supporter with kindness and compassion. And, being gentle. And I love at the end, it says considering our own needs. Sometimes, I don't know if others are maybe guilty of this, but I have had a tendency and still do at times to just override my own needs. And it's not till further along, when I get worn out or depleted or crashed, and I'm like, hey, I really needed to do something different or to get support. So cultivating that self-kindness. And the last one, common humanity. So we are all human beings. And I think, especially when that inner critic rears its ugly head, we tend to think, well, I actually was thinking about this. I want to acknowledge that we're all super women here. We're incredible, right? We're Wonder Women and we're human beings. And so we need to just acknowledge that we are human, that things happen, that we have common experience, and we may all have very different life backgrounds and experiences, and respond to things in different ways, and yet there are some commonalities, and that we're just accepting that we're human and that we have, I hate to say it, limitations. Because on a spiritual level, I know we don't, we're potential, but we are a human being having a spiritual being, I say, having a human experience, but we are human. And so just that's part of being gentle, is acknowledging that as well as I want to add, that's part of how we connect with others. So just to kind of hold those in your awareness. And then I wanted to touch on a few specific practices that we'll look at. 3 I'd mentioned in the introduction: loving kindness meditation, gratitude, and connection. Talk a little bit about how this can support you in your life, but also business. So I will just maybe say a few things about loving kindness, and we'll do a short practice. Loving kindness, I like to say, and I put the acronym LKM, that's it's definitely how you see it in research, but how it's referenced sometimes, is considered a secular practice. So it has roots in metta, which is a Buddhist meditation practice, been around for thousands of years, but today it's considered secular, and that it has been very highly researched, probably one of the most researched compassion and meditation practices. So there's lots of benefits that have been found in loving kindness, and I share, a pretty good list here. I want to just highlight, a couple things. One is that cultivating positive emotions, positivity, well-being. So there's that proactive aspect, and then there's easing symptoms of PTSD, depression, trauma, even anxiety. So reducing, certain things that we're feeling, challenging feelings. And I guess also, if you look at this list, thinking about body, mind, emotion, spirit, there's, certainly helping with emotions, the mental aspect, reducing self-criticism, definitely is relating to our mental level. And then the physical, there's actually benefits relating to decreasing inflammation and improving immune function. So this practice and several of the compassion practices we'll touch on really support body, mind, emotion, spirit, and can be in that way a foundation for self-care and a holistic approach, as well as as integration and integrating all those parts. something I wanted to, yeah. So, and then increasing empathy. I just like to say that's increasing empathy for others. And again, when we come back to self-compassion for ourselves. So in the Buddhist tradition, in the roots of metta, it's understood that in the Dalai Lama, if you've ever heard him speak about loving kindness, he talks about it all the time. In order to create or offer loving kindness and compassion to others, we have to create that foundation in ourselves. So the practice starts with ourselves, and then there's a range of categories, which I've just highlighted on the left, that we can go through. And in each of those, we're extending out that energy of compassion. And it's a way to explore how we relate with others, and it's fostering connection as well as compassion. So I'd like to just lead us in a short practice. I'm going to invite you wherever you are to find a comfortable position, have your feet on the floor. If you'd like to, you can close your eyes or just have a soft gaze on the floor in front of you, just for a few moments. And just feeling yourself supported by your seat, by the earth beneath your feet. Maybe take a deeper breath or two to just settle into this moment. If you'd like, you can put a hand on your heart right in the center of your chest, center of love, compassion, gentleness for yourself and for others. And then in order to cultivate loving kindness, I'm going to invite you in this moment to think of someone, a being. It could be a human being in your life. It could be an animal, a pet, a dog or a cat, bird. Someone, this being, you think of them and you feel a sense of unconditional love and compassion. Just thinking about them, and really the idea of being in their presence just kind of lights up your heart, creates that warm feeling. Just imagine yourself being with this person. They're sitting across from you. You feel a heart connection from their heart to your heart. And through that heart connection, you just begin to receive the energy of unconditional love. Just letting it flow like a wave from their heart into your heart. As with each breath, just gathering it and allowing it to flow into your whole body. And as you breathe out, it also surrounds and envelops you. Really filling yourself, receiving from your loving being, energy of loving kindness, letting it flow into your body, mind, emotion, spirit on each in-breath, expanding. And as you breathe out, it surrounds and envelops you. Just noticing how that feels to begin to fill yourself in this way. And then I'll invite you to offer some metta phrases to yourself. I'll say them aloud and you can repeat each one silently to yourself. Again, just imagining that you're showering yourself. It's really this feeling of unconditional love and compassion. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free of suffering. May I have ease of well-being. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free of suffering. May I have ease of well-being. Just noticing how it's felt to offer that loving kindness to yourself, open to receive it. Maybe notice any shifts or changes since you began to practice. To finish, seeing your loving being across from you, we might call them a benefactor or a mentor, someone who supports us, or a friend or beloved family member. And just for a moment, send that loving kindness back to them from your heart to their heart, that unconditional love. And just offer them one round of phrases. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free of suffering. May you have ease of well-being. And letting the image of that person go for this time. And just holding all of us in this circle, practicing together. Just asking that this practice be for our own benefit and that of all beings. Just imagine offering that to each other. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be free of suffering. May we have ease of well-being. And then just taking a moment to come back. Maybe take a deeper breath, move your hands or feet. I think I went a little longer than I planned there. It felt so yummy. So I'm going to just a couple minutes left, I think. We'll go on. So these are the phrases that I used, and they're variations. You might find different ones, or you can create your own. I hope you enjoyed that practice. Can you tell me how I'm doing on time? So
You're actually right at the end, so it's 8:30.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to share. We had a couple more things, gratitude and connection. I have actually a handout, and I'm going to put it in the chat, a link where you can access it. And I actually have a few presentations on this, so I'll share that also with anybody who gets the handout. I could send you a link. So thank you. Hang on, I'll stop the share here.
Okay, thank you, Beth. I would like everyone here to unmute yourself so we can clap for Beth and let her know that we appreciate this. I don't know about you, I'm such a peaceful place. I don't know if I want to clap, but like, yay, Beth, here you go. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And yes, put your information in the chat for you did that. Okay, and I will see, I know there were a couple people that had to go. I will see that they get that as well. So before I sign off here, I want to thank you, Beth, and I want to thank everyone who's watching this either as a Facebook Live or on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to have information about one of our Zoom gatherings, we have 11 of them per month right now, or an in-person in Columbia, Maryland, Tallahassee, Florida, or Richmond, Virginia, you could just put something in the comments and I will get back to you, or you can go to our website, opwgc.com. Thanks so much.